Welcome to Business Buying Strategies, the UK's #1 podcast for smart business buyers. Hosted by Jonathan Jay, one of the world's leading authorities on small business acquisition. This show helps you buy your first business without risking your own money. Ready to get started? Don't forget to grab your free business buying toolkit, packed with reports, videos, and cheat sheets at dealmakerspodcast.co.uk.
Hi, this is Jonathan Jay, and welcome to Business Buying Strategies, the #1 podcast for people interested in buying their own business without risking any of their own cash. On this week's episode, we're going to meet Neil. Now, Neil found me online, just like many of you have, but he went on to do the dealmaker training with me. He started off as a dissatisfied employee, and he started to build his business when he lost his job just before the pandemic in 2020. Now, he needed just a dozen or so clients to cover his family's costs and needs, but he was more ambitious than that. And here he is, 5 years on, where he's scaled to over 600 clients and £1 million in annual revenue. On this episode of the podcast, he'll describe to you exactly how he did it.
I think I've always wanted to have my own business, and I struggled in employment. I job hopped a little bit. I got made redundant a bunch of times, and I just never felt like I sort of played by the rules. I always wanted to do other things within the jobs that I was in. And because I worked mainly for large corporates, I was sort of pigeonholed into a role, and sort of my wings were
As an accountant?
Yeah, sure. As an accountant, yeah. So technical finance, first of all, and then branched into a more commercial management accounting type role. So I was talking to the business quite a lot, but it was about the numbers. I wanted to do some more operational bits and pieces. And so probably throughout 2018 and 19, I kind of positioned myself to kind of have a business. So I think I set the business up in 2018, did nothing with it, still working full time. And then towards the end of 2019, I decided to do a few tax returns, some very, very small bits of work. And I think I got the confidence then that I invoiced somebody and they paid me, and then I did a bit of work. It was kind of that chain of events that kind of, I had the eureka moment. And then
That you could do this yourself.
Yeah, I think I knew that I could do the technical work, but it was the point of having the confidence to go out there and say, I could do the technical work. Will you pay me to do some work? And so I did a couple of very, very small jobs around sort of Christmas 2019. And then at the beginning of 2020, I lost my job, which was my full-time job at the time. And we've never really had many savings as a family. We've always plowed it back into the house and the kids. Sure. And my wife was a stay-at-home mum at that point. She had been for about 10 years. And so we looked at the bank. We had about 2 months worth of cash to pay the mortgage and our bills. And I turned around to my wife and said, look, this is potentially a really good opportunity for me to, these 3 or 4 clients that I've got, if I can do it for 3 or 4 clients, why can't I do it for 30 or 40? And so we did some numbers. We realised my clients pay me on a monthly basis via direct debit. So we realised on an average fee basis, we needed about sort of 12, 15 clients paying me on that kind of basis to effectively pay the bills. And fortunately, from January to sort of early, middle of March, we got to that target, and it was kind of champagne and celebrations in the house. Yeah, we felt really proud of kind of what we did in a relatively small amount of time. And then obviously COVID hit. And at that point, it was, are we going to lose everything that we've kind of built up?
Well, I mean, it sent a ripple through all businesses, didn't it? Because suddenly the certainty that you might have had of the future just evaporated, and it was what is around the corner, what's going to happen next. And, when your clients are other businesses, if their businesses are disrupted, it disrupts yours, doesn't it? How did we first meet? Probably online.
I think it was probably a week before I lost my job. So very early in January, I got a meeting with a guy called Andrew Scott that I know that you know
yeah,
quite
so
well.
He's spoken at lots of our events over the years, yes.
Yeah, so he's quite a well-known entrepreneur in Weston-super-Mare, where I'm from. And he humbled me and gave me a meeting, and I thought I was going to go into his boardroom for 10, 15 minutes for a chat, and he gave me a couple of hours. And I think that gave me quite a lot of inspiration in terms of his advice, and he was telling me kind of I was doing the right things in terms of what I wanted to do. And as a result of knowing him, I'd been reading Business Leader magazine for quite a while.
Which is the magazine he
owned at the time, yeah. And I just stumbled across an advert from yourself. I think it was one of your books. And I literally just started the business. I had no kind of idea about acquiring a business, but I was just trying to consume as much knowledge and entrepreneurial kind of learnings as I could. And so I just bought your book off that and sort of followed you ever since.
One thing led to another. So, so growing a business organically, which is one customer at a time, you win a customer, you lose a customer, you win a few, have a great week, lose a few, have a terrible month. That's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, especially during COVID, because I think, it was me at the time for the first 2 years at least. People coming to me, their finances were strapped because they may have been struggling during COVID. As probably most entrepreneurs with a startup do, they probably undersold themselves and they probably took on the wrong client. And I definitely did that multiple times. But we needed the client base to get the money to effectively, feed the family.
Your survival.
Yeah. And, kind of learning everything that was happening with COVID at the time as well. It was just a sort of a fight or flight mentality. And so, yeah, I would probably say like throughout maybe the first year, I was signing maybe a couple of clients a month. It wasn't like ridiculously fast growth, but it was enough for me to cope with. We were onboarding people in about sort of 1 or 2 months. And then by the time we'd onboarded them, we'd have another kind of cohort of new clients. So it was enough for me to be busy. And obviously, as I kind of stacked the client base, then our monthly recurring revenue increased and we could then invest in things like technology, which made me work more efficiently. But yeah, it kind of got to the end of year 2, and I think we got to about maybe 70 or 80 clients. I was turning over about $250,000. And I think it was at that point there that effectively, I needed help. And this guy spotted me and he reached out on LinkedIn, sent me a LinkedIn message just asking for a half an hour Zoom call because he was struggling. And I said, fine, okay, cool. And we had that chat. And I gave him some bits and pieces of advice that I kind of learned along the way in the first couple of years. And then he went, and then this probably would have been in and around middle of 2021. And then a year later, he came back to say he tried what I'd asked or what I told him to try, and it just didn't work. And he wanted a career change, and he was working part-time. So he had a very, very small fee bank at the time. And he effectively asked if I was interested in acquiring his fee bank. And so I picked your book up. I read it again. And at that point, I think I attended one of your masterclass sessions, which was a virtual session. I thought, fantastic, this will give me a good framework to potentially then acquire this very, very small business.
Okay. And we spoke earlier, and it was a small business, wasn't it? It was a micro business.
Yeah.
What did you learn about buying a micro business from that experience?
Oh, crikey. I think I was fortunate at the time because we just had a new starter. So our third member of the team joined in September, and we acquired this business towards the end of October. So I knew we had the capacity to service these clients. So as we were going through due diligence, we know what sort of services these clients were getting. And I think something that really kind of resonated with me was around things like maybe work in progress and things like some of the things that he was kind of recharging that we wouldn't necessarily need to through economies of scale. And in one of my previous jobs, I did a lot of work within M&A in the veterinary sector, but I kind of had some knowledge around acquisition budgets and sort of things to look out for in like adjusted EBITDA and things like that and things that we could look at. And so I kind of just pulled all that information together, and it was a very, very quick kind of process. I think, he had a price in mind. I did some sums, showed him some workings, and we came to a very quick negotiation. I think he wanted to exit quite quickly. And in terms of the deal structure, we agreed half up front and then half after 12 months with clawback in as well in terms of clients being lost.
And ultimately, was there any clawback?
There wasn't a huge amount. I mean, this was a business based in Bournemouth as well, so not local to me whatsoever. But I thought it gave me kind of an idea about how an acquisition would look. Bearing in mind, up to this point, purely organic growth, I think at this point we were probably about £350,000 turnover with maybe about 110, 120 clients. And that pipeline wasn't really showing any sign of slowing down. So this was kind of a bit of a jolt in the arm, a little bit of a punch, shall we say, to say, can I do this as a process? And actually, if I can do it as a process, if I did a business that was 4 or 5x this current one that we're doing, then how would that work? And so from a process point of view...
I guess it was proof of concept.
Yes.
For you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It proved to you that you could do it, proved that it was something that could be done, and you could see the impact on your existing business.
Yes, yeah. And go back to your original question, we did lose a few clients, but we've retained most of them and we still have them to this day. You know, we've sold to the majority of them. So from a fee perspective, we're not any worse off. In fact, we've probably earned more revenue from these clients. And it's the intangible aspects of these clients as well. So it's, it's the Google reviews that they leave. It's the referrals that they give us. It's kind of all of that untapped potential that isn't necessarily on a deal sheet when you're dealing with a finite amount of clients. And I think that was quite interesting to kind of figure out as well along the way.
That's a good thing to say, actually, because, it's not just about the money. It's about those intangible assets that come with the business, especially a service-based business like yours. So deal number one was very much proof of concept.
Yeah.
And I can see the accountant in you when let's test small and see if it works. And then you went and did another one, but a lot bigger, didn't you?
Yes. So I was approached by someone at the tail end of 2023. They were looking to retire. And at this point, we were a team of 6 or 7, I think we were at this point. And I think 2023, we just done about 550,000 turnover. So again, we've been growing quite aggressively from an organic point of view. And, kind of the branding was working well online. I was doing more stuff with the Value Pricing Academy. I was doing conference talks with the likes of ZeroCon. And so a lot of these things were kind of facilitating, almost being a key person of influence. And certainly locally, I do a lot of stuff with the college and the schools and all of that kind of activity amplified. And obviously, as you get a bigger client base, you naturally, hopefully, if you do good work, you get more referrals. And so we were noticing that actually the organic work, more of a proportion of that was being brought in by existing clients and not just through Facebook.
So it's success breeds success.
Yeah, exactly that.
And were you doing client work yourself at this point?
I was doing a very small amount. I think throughout 2022, and it was difficult to let go, as I'm sure many kind of startup entrepreneurs would say, but I had to let go because what's the point in hiring the people if you're going to continue to do the work? And it was the 5 or 10 minute tasks that would have been easy of me to have done myself that I spent maybe 2 hours training somebody how to do. But these were tasks that were recurring every single day, every single week. And so the compounding effect of that meant that I could delegate a little bit more. That would increase their knowledge base. That would give them a bit more confidence. I trust them. And so by this point, end of 2023, I probably had maybe a dozen clients of the whatever sort of 150, 200 that we had. And it was kind of legacy stuff. It was like very, very small bits and pieces. It wasn't a huge workload. And so this person came to me at the end of sort of around Christmas 2023, wanted to retire. We just had a chat. She kind of detailed the clients. A lot of the systems they were using were similar to ours. There was a small team of 2 that were servicing the clients. One of them was a CTA, a chartered tax advisor. And I thought that'd be brilliant because at this point, everyone reported up to me. And so anything too technical for the guys at that point, it was just floating straight up to me. So I thought, brilliant. I could have this CTA in place. I could maybe create a sort of sub-layer, management layer within the team. And that would free me up even more. I could sort of pivot my role again. And that was it. We had some kind of discussions and some negotiations. And we did the deal in July 2024.
And from the very first conversation to completing, what was the timescale?
About 6 months.
Okay.
All
right.
About 6 months. I think
that's a little longer than average. Why would you say that?
I think
was the length of time.
I think the challenge that we had was that it was originally a team of 4, and she was honest. She told me that she was over-resourced. I wouldn't need all 4 people. We had some existing resource in our existing team as it was. And so the plan was to potentially make 2 people redundant, and I would take the 2 people that she thought would be the best fit for us. And so there's a lot of legal discussions around TUPE and the redundancies. And I think there was a little bit of confusion because partway through, one of the 2 potential people that were being made redundant actually handed in the notice voluntarily and left. And so that I didn't cause an additional challenge. We didn't use a solicitor at all for the first deal.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't do that at all, primarily because of the deal size.
Yeah, sure.
And just didn't feel it equitable. Yeah, so this was kind of my first dealing with a solicitor going through this process. And I just thought that was kind of the normal time that it would take. I knew that there was some challenges around the TUPE and some confusions. Whether that
people overcomplicate it. I mean, I'm the last person to ask about anything to do with HR, by the way. It's not my strength. I've done hundreds and hundreds of TUPE transfers, and I can assure you, it is a lot more straightforward than people tell you that it is.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people have a vested interest in making it out to be more complicated than it needs to be in order to charge you the fees.
Yeah, I think the communication from my side was that they just wanted to protect me, and
Sure.
I didn't know anything different, let's say.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so with best intentions, I sort of agreed with whatever they said.
Okay.
So like roughly about 6 months it took.
Okay. But what impact did that have on your existing business doing that deal?
From a numbers perspective, we acquired about 125 clients, I think. No, sorry, about 100 clients it was. It was about 125,000 in revenue. So we'd gone up from about 550 to sort of touching 700.
Want to buy a business the smart way? Download Jonathan Jay's free business buying toolkit. It's packed with 16 reports, checklists, cheat sheets, and more to help you succeed. This is the ultimate toolkit for anyone who wants to buy a business successfully. Claim your toolkit now at dealmakerspodcast.co.uk.
2 deals down, you've gone from 0, just an idea, to how many clients in total now?
I think after that July acquisition, we went to about 300 clients.
Got it. So if you were to just have grown organically, going out and winning the business yourself, do you think that the growth trajectory would have been the same?
Well, no, because we've been signing around 5 or 6 new clients every single month. And so, to get 100 clients.
So it's actually a year's worth of clients in a day.
Another vendor approached me. This one was much more local in town. And business was about 3 times the size, both in terms of clients and revenue. And I decided at the time that we could do both of these deals together. Now, what actually transpired is that we did that first one in July. And the second one actually went over the line in November for a variety of different reasons. And I was actually quite thankful that happened, because considering the July one took a good kind of 2 to 3 months to really flesh out in terms of onboarding, just as we were getting over the crest of the hill of that one, then this other one came in November. And that was about 350 clients.
So you've actually done 3 deals?
Yes.
So what does the business look like now, then, in terms of number of clients?
A number of clients, about 600, roughly, 650,
Okay.
and then about 1 million turnover.
Are you doing client work yourself?
No. So over the last year, I've completely extricated myself from doing.
And I've got to say, Neil, that is the biggest impact, right? Because now you can focus on the future and the growth strategy of the business and managing the management team, rather than when you first started. I think you said you were doing the VAT returns, you were looking after the website, you were doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
And it's transformed you really from the business owner who does everything to someone with a deal maker, investor mindset.
Yeah, and I think, this third acquisition that we did in November, that was kind of the real tipping point, because up to like early this year, it was still a flat structure. So, we hadn't had the management team in place. Everyone reported into me still at that point. From a personal point of view, I've got a nice car. I've got a really nice house. The kids are so happy they have space. The quality, like we can eat our food to a dinner table. It's the little things.
So everything's transformed in like a 5-year period then?
Oh, yeah.
2020, beginning of 2020 through to 25.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, from having 3 or 4 clients in January 2020 to where we are now. Yeah, completely different.
Amazing. I want to find out how that happened. 3 deals to 1 million. Which was the best of those 3 deals?
I'd probably say the latest one, the third one, mainly because it highlighted that I had to change how I was running the business, I guess from a management point of view and an operational point of view. And some of the things we did the deal just before Christmas as well. So it wasn't particularly great timing, what with the January tax deadline as well here in the UK. So we had that to contend with. We had about 100 tax returns to do that we'd inherited from the people that we did the deal with. So that wasn't great. And then my dad was really ill as well, and we almost lost him in January. And I was working out of a hospital for the first 2 months of doing the deal. And so all of those things combined, I literally just kind of sat myself down for a couple of days and sort of mapped out what the plan was. Like, what was I doing here? Like, everybody was reporting into me. We had a team of 12 at this point, like doing one-to-ones, doing them all the marketing. I wasn't doing any client work at this point. But
so let me just stop you there, because one thing I should have mentioned, even though the 0 on your T-shirt may be giving it away, these are accountancy businesses. So there are no assets. The assets are the people, aren't they? And you're buying client bases, and you bought 3 client bases, combined them. But to because I know your story, you started off as a startup of an accountancy business, doing everything yourself until your wife said, I believe, you've got to get someone else to help you because you're working these long hours and we don't see very much of you. Now, I guess those long hours are still there, but you're doing different things. So you're no longer doing people's tax returns, are you?
No. So I think the majority of the time that I spend now is I still meet a lot of clients. We still have advisory discussions. But in terms of like the physical day-to-day compliance work, doing bookkeeping, doing VAT returns, I don't do any of that now. You know, we've got a really good solid team in place that can manage that. We've got a management layer now as well, where, to be honest, those guys are probably more technically adept at tax than I am. And so really the only things that float up to me from a decision point of view is kind of more operational, commercial. So yeah, we do. I don't do
which is just a massive transformation. And you've done it in a few short years, because I meet business owners who've been in business for 10, 20, 30 years, and they still do everything, complain that their staff know nothing and do nothing, and they're lazy and they ask stupid questions. And really, that's their fault, right? That's the owner's fault. If they haven't been able to release themselves from the business, they've actually got in the way of their own growth. But you don't have that mindset at all. You have the mindset of, let's engage and employ the right people, because then I can focus on thinking about the next deal.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I worked in industry, I had relatively senior teams, and, you know, they did the majority of the day-to-day work, and then I sort of oversaw them and did the more higher level activities. And I think I've just carried that mindset into this business. And, you know, I read quite a lot. I listen to gurus, and, you know, the one thing that they say is that if you want to make your business attractive if and when you want to come to exit, then you can't be doing all the work, because if no one wants to purchase a job, they want to buy a business.
And can I ask how old you are?
I'm 41.
So you started when you were
36.
And I think that's quite a revelation as well, because, again, I meet business owners in their 60s who haven't had that insight. They've basically had this 30 years in business, which kind of looks the same, and they've never released themselves from the day-to-day. They've never had the growth, and they live a life of frustration.
Yeah, I mean, the latest acquisition, you know, that vendor was 69, and the previous one to that was about 60. And I sort of looked at that as a model and said, if I'm 40 now, would I want to do this for another 30 years?
Yes.
And I love what I do. Don't get me wrong. I have a passion for what I do, but I do want to do other things and other projects. And, you know, doing this job for the last 5 years has been incredibly difficult in all areas, mentally, physically, emotionally. I haven't got another 30 years of doing this. I've probably got another, maybe, let's say 5 years, 10 years. But every decision that we make in this business now, or that I make in this business, is effectively building us up to be more marketable and to be more attractive.
I guess you have recurring revenue, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So your clients are billed monthly.
Yeah.
I would imagine that it's all on some sort of direct debit or standing order system.
Yeah.
So you're not collecting debts apart from a few that don't go through the first time.
Sure.
So you've actually got a systemized approach. So if you were to do another deal, I'm sure you're going to do another one, then you've actually got a systemized, packaged approach to running this type of business that you can slot those clients into.
Yeah, and I think we will do another deal. Quite when that might be, it would depend on the circumstance and the situation. But, you know, we've got this management team in place. We've had a big IT overhaul, because last year we've effectively had 3 businesses and stitched them all together.
Yes.
And in some places quite haphazardly as well. So we've had a big IT review. We've had a big management team review. And as such now, we are far better placed to acquire another business. And the process, I would like to think, would be a lot easier than the previous 2 that we did last year.
So with this systemized approach, which means that you can slot in other businesses, tell me a little bit about, because I think people will be interested in, when you were integrating the 3, tell us some of the stuff that was difficult, that maybe even went wrong, that didn't go according to plan.
The client communication piece was quite difficult, just because, you know, we were trying to do the majority of our communication by email. And, a lot of people wanted to come in and see me and see the office. And we had 2 offices now at this point on the third acquisition. And, when you acquire 300 clients, it's just not physically possible to see each and every one. It's just impossible. Some of the stragglers were very, very difficult. They either weren't receptive to us, or they were complaining about a previous regime, or they wanted things changing. And that
sometimes it's an opportunity to have a moan, isn't it?
Yeah.
To the new owners about what they didn't like with the old owners. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And, most of the feedback was generally quite favourable. But again, some of the stories that the vendor had told us weren't necessarily what reality. And so a few skeletons were kind of coming out of the closet a little bit in terms of, I've not seen so-and-so for such amount of time, or we only see him to sign a tax return and things like that. And that, it didn't worry me a little bit, but we are very much not a once-a-year accountancy firm. We like to think that we're sort of a once or twice a month in terms of engagement.
Yes.
And so I very quickly had to kind of steer the rhetoric to say, well, this is what we're all about. And again, because we've got a relatively decent online brand, I was pointing people to the Facebook group or my LinkedIn profile. Look at some of these case studies. Look at how I talk. You can garner all this information from what we do online. You don't necessarily have to meet me in person.
What I've learned about taking over a business, and especially if it's one business taking over another, and it's that sort of potential culture clash, is communication. And if you don't communicate, then the gaps in communication are filled with gossip and have you heard type sort of Chinese whispers where everything gets confused. Yeah. Even when you feel like you're over communicating, you're probably still not doing enough to keep in touch with people, because it settles down. I mean, people don't have questions for you for like 6, 8, 12 months. I mean, it's just those first few weeks just to let everyone get it out and then just let it calm down. Yeah. I believe that you did each of these 3 acquisitions as an asset purchase. Why asset rather than shares?
The main thing was, I feel quite proud of the brand that I've created and kind of the footprint that we've got locally. And I mean, the third one was quite a straightforward answer because it was a franchise business. Okay. And so that was kind of one of the main reasons for that.
Yeah, I understood. Well, yes, absolutely.
And they've been looking to sell that business for at least a couple of years prior to me getting involved.
Okay, so actually quite a motivated seller then.
Yes. They've been in town for about 25 years. So, and a lot of people know that person as well. And so I guess I felt proud that they chose us to kind of carry on that legacy. But at the same time, they were 68, 69. And, they wanted effectively to retire straight away.
So what people don't realise is that you can build value, substantial value, quite quickly. It's not a lifetime of work and then you sell, because even if you do sell for a decent amount of money, you probably won't be able to enjoy it because you're too old.
Yeah, exactly.
And you haven't got your mobility, and your friends have died, and all these awful things. So I say enjoy it when you're physically capable of enjoying it. Yeah. So create the value as quickly as possible. So I've got people who were talking earlier on before we went on air about my inner circle group, which is everyone who's bought. You buy a business, and if you buy a business, you qualify for the inner circle group, because we don't talk about how to buy a business. We talk about bigger, better deals. We talk about sort of raising the bar, really. And we've got people come into the group. In fact, one lady was saying how she was quite comfortable doing deals around the £1 million revenue mark, but now she's upped her game to five times that. Now she's just looking at bigger businesses. But what the common denominator is when we have our conversations is that people underestimate what is possible. And I sometimes say to an audience or to a group, I have greater belief in you than you have in yourself, because I know what you can do. You don't yet realize it, okay? And I think there's this belief that you have to be in business for decades to make any serious money. No, you can own a business for 18 months and make some serious money. The shortest time I've ever owned a business is 11 months. Right. And it was a £1 acquisition of a distressed business, which I don't recommend to people, by the way. I do not recommend buying distressed businesses. And I sold it 11 months later for 1.3 million in cash. So real cash, money cash, not shares or anything, but real cash. And that was the fastest turnaround. And just by telling that story, people go, I wonder whether I could do that. And it starts to set the cogs going. And the community of being sitting next to people, like just us having this conversation here, there'll be people watching this and going, well, if they can do it, I can do it, which is brilliant because it raises the bar for everyone, doesn't it?
I have a bit of anxiety every now and then. I feel imposter syndrome quite a lot because I still think 5 years ago where we were, and it's difficult sometimes to stop and look back and figure out, crikey, look how far we've come. Doing things like this and getting on stage and talking at conferences, it really helps to sort of bring that out. And then that then gives you the confidence to say, well, we can do another acquisition, or we can do something else that would lead to business growth, because we've done all of this up till now. So why can't we do anything else?
So here's the thing. So you've done 3 deals. Do you still feel, though, that you might limit yourself in some way, or do you feel that the brakes are now off?
I've always said to people that I don't want like an army of people that work with me. So 20 is a team size that I've kind of, I don't know, I've sort of hedged my bets on. I don't know. I mean, my ultimate aim, I would love to sell the business to the team and do something like an EOT or something. And, one of the reasons why we're cultivating this management team is to potentially then take over when the time is right.
I like that, yeah.
I don't want to grow the business to a size where it then becomes a bit daunting for them, or maybe too expensive for them to kind of take that on. And so I think right now we're at a level where everyone's happy, everyone's comfortable. We make good margins. We're doing lots of stuff locally. We're really happy with how we are. But in 6 months' time, if something else strategically came up, and we look at that deal and go, Joe Blogg's in that team, that would be a really good addition to our existing team. We feel like they could bring us a different dynamic. It might be doing mortgage work or doing audit work or like the business. And making us a bit more of a rounded. I definitely wouldn't say no to that.
It occurs to me that if you could do that EOT deal and become a millionaire, I think that would be an incredible 5.5 year, 6 year journey. Because I always say to people that buying a business isn't just about buying a business, it's the person you become in the process. But likewise, becoming a millionaire is about the person you become in the process. And when you've done it once, you know that nothing can stop you. Someone can take it all away from you and you can build it back up.
Yeah.
And I just think that would be a wonder. If this isn't something that you want to do forever, then why didn't you go and take that skill, that knowledge, that experience with $1 million+ in the bank as your sort of, your wife will thank you, as the safety net, and go and do it with a different type of business, with a higher exit multiple, and basically have fun buying and selling businesses.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought. I don't think I would want to sell 100% of the business, I would say. I think I'd probably want to retain, 25% of it maybe, because I would still want to do something, maybe it's like a couple of days a month or something, or something to help the guys in a transitional state of affairs, whether it's over a couple of years or whatever. So I can't ever see myself exiting the business completely. I think the legacy that I've created and the fact that it's got my name in the title of the company, which most people say you should do.
It's not always the best idea.
We've done it right up to now.
But you've done it now. So
yeah. And so, I don't think I'd ever sell it completely. But you're right. I think I alluded to the fact that I've got a couple of other investments and projects and other people that want to come in on a journey with me that maybe lack the capital or the experience of running a business. And they've seen what I've done, and they have some very exciting plans that sound quite appealing. And I'd love to kind of see and do some more of those.
So one of the things we talk about a lot in a circle in particular is de-risking. So you could de-risk your life. And once you've de-risked your life and you don't have to worry about the mortgage anymore, and you can feel that sense of you've arrived, then you can spend time on those other projects. You can do other things. And you know something, if you buy, build, and sell, then people will seek you out. They'll say, look, I've got this manufacturing business here. Would you be interested in becoming our chairman or our non-exec or a shareholder to help us do the same? So you actually open up those business opportunities.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because being a non-exec director is something that's really quite interesting. Again, locally, lots of businesses, lots of startups. And I think that I do have something to add in some sort of advisory kind of board capacity, and maybe doing a very small portfolio of those could be something that I do in the future. I'd be very interested in that, yeah.
Neil, it's been great talking to you. Congratulations on your success. And I reckon we'll be back in the studio in 12 months' time to find out the next chapter of the story. Neil, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Business Buying Strategies. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And remember, for more resources and guidance on buying a business, visit dealmakers.co.uk. Have you downloaded your free business buying toolkit yet? It's packed with resources to help you close your next deal. Get it now at dealmakerspodcast.co.uk. We're back in a fortnight. Until then, here's to your next successful acquisition.